I don't want to. There are too many reasons. It's too complicated. It's too painful. I'm just telling you, it's over.
Graham Nash, the voice of clarity, reflection, and harmony. His songs with Crosby, Stills, and Nash inspired millions, and his perspective on the music world carried wisdom and insight. But behind the chart-topping hits and timeless performances, there was always another story, one tied inseparably to David Crosby. Their friendship, rivalries, and creative clashes fueled legendary music, but also left questions fans longed to answer. For decades, Nash let the records speak, leaving fans to guess what he truly thought about his bandmate. But now, Graham Nash finally speaks. And what he confirms about David Crosby doesn't just revisit old band dynamics. It casts Crosby and their shared legacy in a new, startling light. What did Nash finally admit after all these years? Stay with us as we find out. For decades, whispers followed David Crosby and Graham Nash wherever they went. Fans speculated endlessly, trying to decipher the intricate web of tensions, disagreements, and unspoken truths that underpinned the music of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Rumors weren't just idle chatter. They were persistent questions about loyalty, betrayal, and the fractures in one of rock's most celebrated partnerships. Nash had long stayed quiet, offering polite smiles and vague reassurances, but the speculation never truly faded. The public had always been fascinated by Crosby, brilliant, magnetic, and mercurial. His genius was undeniable, but so too was the turbulence he carried into every collaboration. Fans and journalists alike noted the volatility, the moods that could shift a studio from serene to combustible in an instant. Everyone sensed that there was more behind Crosby's charisma than met the eye, and it was Graham Nash who had witnessed it all firsthand. Nash, the steady counterbalance to Crosby's storm, had always known that the truth would eventually need telling, but when and how remained the question. From early tours to late-night recording sessions, Nash saw the behind-the-scenes reality that no liner notes captured. He knew about the conflicts with bandmates, the clashes over creative direction, and the personal choices Crosby made that sometimes bewildered everyone around him. Yet, for decades, Nash held his tongue, respecting privacy, friendship, and the fragile ecosystem of a band whose sound depended on the delicate interplay of voices. The rumors, though, refused to die. Music journalists, biographers, and fans pieced together fragments, interpreting lyrical ambiguities and cryptic interviews as hints of hidden truths. Even those closest to the band couldn't fully decipher Crosby. His charm and intelligence could mask insecurity, anger, or deep-seated frustrations. Nash observed moments when Crosby would retreat into himself, scribbling lyrics or melodies that seemed to speak more about inner battles than the music itself. These moments, private and unrecorded, were the foundation of the speculation that persisted. Was there a betrayal, a secret rivalry, a personal indiscretion that had shaped the band's dynamic in ways no one could publicly acknowledge? Nash's own life intertwined deeply with these rumors.
I told Crosby what I'd written, and he said, "Hey, do not change a word. I did it."
He was a mediator, a witness, and often a silent participant in the dramas that unfolded. Over the years, he became acutely aware that the mythology surrounding Crosby wasn't just about gossip, it was about perception, myth-making, and the way fans projected stories onto the enigmatic figure of his bandmate. While some tales were exaggerated, others contained kernels of truth that Nash alone could confirm. By the time Nash finally decided to speak, the anticipation had reached a fever pitch. The music world wanted clarity, and the public craved resolution. Nash understood the stakes, that revealing what he knew would not only illuminate Crosby's personal and professional history, but also reshape the way fans perceived one of rock's most enduring collaborations. This wasn't casual commentary. It was a reckoning with decades of secrecy, speculation, and unsaid truths. When Nash finally addressed the rumors, he did so with precision, honesty, and care. He didn't speak out of malice or sensationalism. Instead, he aimed to correct misconceptions, provide context, and finally offer the world an insider's view of the man at the center of so many questions. The revelations would confirm suspicions, dispel myths, and, for many, answer the questions they had been asking for years. David Crosby's brilliance was undeniable, but so was the shadow he carried, a combination of personal demons, unfiltered honesty, and a relentless pursuit of perfection that sometimes alienated even those closest to him. Graham Nash, who shared countless hours of stage and studio time with Crosby, knew this better than anyone. The harmonies that delighted millions were born from collaboration, yes, but also from tension, negotiation, and the unspoken understanding of boundaries. Boundaries Crosby often tested, intentionally or not. Crosby's shadow was not always visible to outsiders. On the surface, he was charming, witty, and effortlessly talented. Yet behind that facade were moments of volatility that could derail a recording session or turn a simple conversation into an emotional storm. Nash, whose temperament contrasted sharply with Crosby's, often served as the bridge between Crosby and the rest of the band. He had to navigate moods, egos, and unpredictable decisions that sometimes threatened to undo months of work in an instant. Some of the tension came from Crosby's relentless creative drive. He pushed boundaries in songwriting, arrangement, and performance, always seeking the perfect expression. While his ambition was admirable,
To me, it's about songs. We serve the song. That's really our job.
it often clashed with practical realities, schedules, and the creative visions of others. Nash witnessed these conflicts firsthand, often mediating, negotiating, and sometimes simply waiting for storms to pass. Behind every flawless harmony lay countless moments of disagreement and compromise that the public would never see. Crosby's personal life added another layer to the shadow. His relationships were intense, complicated, and often intertwined with professional collaborations. Nash knew of instances where personal entanglements influenced decision-making, caused misunderstandings, or created friction that reverberated through the band. These moments were rarely documented, but they shaped the music as much as any melody or chord progression. Through it all, Nash's loyalty was tested. He balanced admiration for Crosby's genius with the frustration of witnessing the consequences of that genius, from missed opportunities to conflicts that might have been avoided if emotions were managed differently. Yet, he never abandoned the music or the friendship, understanding that the shadows were part of the larger tapestry of Crosby's life. The harmonies that fans adored masked years of struggle, negotiation, and tension. Crosby's shadow was always present, a complex blend of brilliance, vulnerability, and volatility. And when Nash finally spoke about it, he illuminated that balance, revealing that the magic of Crosby, Stills, and Nash was inseparable from the human flaws that made the music so real and compelling. Studios are meant to capture sound, but for Crosby, Nash, and their collaborators, they often captured something far more intimate, the raw, unfiltered truth of human interaction. Graham Nash witnessed countless moments where the line between creativity and personal conflict blurred, where a single lyric, chord, or note could ignite both inspiration and tension. The studio was a crucible, and secrets were forged alongside harmonies. Crosby's meticulous attention to detail sometimes translated into long hours, repeated takes, and endless debate over phrasing or tone. Nash often found himself caught between supporting Crosby's vision and preserving the group's cohesion. Behind the closed doors of these studios were whispered disagreements, quiet concessions, and strategic silences that would shape the final recordings. Some sessions ended in triumph, others ended with raw frustration, tempers flaring, and egos bruised. It wasn't only the creative process that carried secrets. Personal relationships intersected with professional ones in ways that were complicated and sometimes explosive.
We kind of hung out together, and when we would be in assembly, we would stand together.
Nash observed moments when Crosby's choices, romantic, financial, or artistic, created tension that echoed through every chord and lyric. The studio became a mirror, reflecting not just the music, but the unresolved personal dynamics simmering beneath the surface. Some of the most telling secrets were small, almost imperceptible. A look, a pause, a deliberately altered note. All of these subtle cues revealed more than words ever could. Nash, with his calm demeanor and keen awareness, often decoded these signals, mediating disputes or offering perspective that others might have overlooked. The recordings that fans ultimately heard were polished, harmonious, and seamless, but they were the product of countless unseen negotiations, sacrifices, and quiet confrontations. The secrets also extended to collaborations with other artists. Crosby often invited friends into the studio, and while these sessions could be generative, they sometimes brought their own drama. Rivalries, jealousies, and miscommunications threatened to derail progress, and Nash found himself balancing diplomacy with honesty, ensuring that the music prevailed without sacrificing integrity. Through it all, Nash came to understand a key truth. The magic of Crosby, Stills, and Nash's music was inseparable from these hidden moments. The secrets of the studio, the tensions, and the unspoken agreements were all part of what made their sound extraordinary. When Nash finally confirmed the stories fans had long speculated about, he revealed that the truth was as layered and complex as the harmonies themselves, a testament to both genius and the human cost behind it. For years, the tension between David Crosby and his collaborators simmered beneath the surface.
I think it makes things better, makes people happy.
Invisible to the casual fan, but impossible to ignore for those who worked closely with him. Graham Nash had long been privy to these dynamics, understanding that Crosby's brilliance came hand in hand with volatility. These weren't mere disagreements over lyrics or arrangements. They were storms of ego, expectation, and deep-seated emotion that could shake even the most seasoned musician. Nash recalled moments in the studio when the air felt thick with frustration, a single note out of place, a disagreement over phrasing, or a subtle misalignment in vision could ignite hours of debate. While the public heard seamless harmonies and polished tracks, behind the scenes, the creative process was often a battlefield. Crosby's genius demanded perfection, and anyone who dared to challenge or question him risked exposure to his sharp wit and biting critique. Yet, Nash also recognized that this tension was not purely destructive. It was the spark that fueled innovation, pushing them to craft music that transcended expectation. Outside the studio, the personal lives of the band members intertwined with these professional tensions. Romantic entanglements, long-standing rivalries, and unresolved disputes contributed to the fragile ecosystem of collaboration. Nash often found himself acting as a mediator, balancing his respect and affection for Crosby with the practical necessity of maintaining group cohesion. His patience was tested, but it was also strengthened by years of experience and an unwavering commitment to the music. The tension reached a breaking point during certain recording sessions where tempers flared and silence hung heavier than any melody. Nash described Crosby as a man who felt everything deeply: joy, disappointment, frustration. And these emotions often surfaced in the most unpredictable ways. There were moments of quiet vulnerability too, glimpses of the man behind the public persona, which offered insight into why he could be both captivating and challenging. It was this complexity that Nash finally sought to illuminate. He spoke not to sensationalize, but to provide context for a life and career that had been subject to endless speculation. Fans had long suspected that something more profound and intricate lay behind Crosby's public image, and Nash's confirmation offered clarity. By revealing the nature of these tensions, he painted a fuller picture of the genius, struggles, and human flaws that shaped some of rock's most iconic music. Ultimately, the tensions that broke silence were a reminder that art is inseparable from the people who create it.
When you're in a band with 4 massive ego and 4 massive talent, it gets a little tricky sometimes.
The conflicts, the negotiations, and the emotional turbulence were not obstacles to greatness. They were an integral part of it. Nash's revelations allowed fans to see that the music they loved was born not from ease, but from fire. a fire fueled by passion, dedication, and the sometimes painful process of collaboration. Late-night recording sessions often held the deepest truths, and for Graham Nash, these were the moments that revealed David Crosby's complexities most vividly.
We know we've made a great record. We know we're gonna have to go on tour.
The public only ever saw the polished performances, the interviews, the flawless harmonies, but the real stories unfolded after hours, in dimly lit studios where creativity and vulnerability collided. It was here that Crosby's personality shone in its brightest and darkest forms. Nash remembered nights that stretched into dawn, filled with laughter, argument, and occasional tears. Crosby could be electrifying, infuriating, and profoundly insightful, all within the span of a single hour. The late-night hours peeled away the public facade, exposing raw emotions and unguarded moments. For Nash, witnessing this side of Crosby offered both understanding and unease. It revealed the man behind the music, a man of immense talent, immense ego, and an unrelenting commitment to authenticity. Some nights, the revelations were creative. A passing comment could spark a melody that transformed an entire song. Crosby's ideas often arrived unpredictably, demanding immediate attention, and those who worked with him had to adapt quickly. Nash understood that these moments were essential, not only to the music, but to Crosby's sense of purpose. The urgency and intensity were inseparable from the art they were creating together. Other nights, the revelations were personal. Nash recalled intimate conversations where Crosby admitted insecurities, regrets, and fears that he had never shared publicly. It was during these sessions that Nash began to understand the full scope of Crosby's influence on music and culture. He saw how deeply personal experiences informed lyrics, harmonies, and the overall tone of their albums. These moments of candor painted a portrait of a man who could be both magnetic and frustrating, brilliant and flawed. The late-night sessions also exposed the delicate balance of collaboration. Friendships were tested, rivalries managed, and egos negotiated in ways that were invisible to outsiders. Nash's role as a witness became crucial. He had to absorb the intensity, mediate disputes, and ensure that creative momentum continued despite personal friction. Without these interventions, some of the most iconic tracks might never have reached completion. By confirming these experiences decades later, Nash offered fans a rare glimpse into the world that shaped Crosby's music. He described not just the sounds, but the environment, the energy, and the emotional stakes. The revelations were not sensationalized gossip, but authentic accounts that contextualized the genius and challenges behind the legend. Ultimately, these late-night revelations underscored the complexity of collaboration and creativity. Crosby's brilliance was inseparable from his volatility, his charm intertwined with his frustrations. Through Nash's perspective, the public could finally appreciate the human dimensions behind the music, the struggles, the triumphs, and the enduring dedication that produced some of rock's most timeless songs. The moment Graham Nash spoke publicly about David Crosby's deepest influences was seismic.
David Crosby dropped out of Santa Barbara City College to pursue music in Los Angeles, which is where he formed The Bird.
Fans, critics, and fellow musicians had long speculated about Crosby's inspirations, alliances, and personal choices, but no one had the authority to confirm the details. Nash's confession was different. It came from decades of proximity, friendship, and direct observation. What he revealed shook long-held assumptions and reframed the understanding of Crosby's life and artistry. Nash began with the musicians Crosby admired most, but the list was more revealing than mere fandom. It illustrated Crosby's philosophy, his values, and the way he approached music as a lifelong conversation with the past. From folk pioneers to jazz legends, the artists he revered were chosen not for popularity, but for their authenticity, their courage to innovate, and their willingness to challenge norms. Each name Nash shared offered insight into Crosby's motivations, his standards, and the uncompromising way he pursued excellence. Beyond the names, Nash revealed personal stories of influence. He recounted late-night listening sessions, impromptu jam circles, and the mentorship Crosby both received and offered. These were moments rarely recorded or discussed in public, but they shaped the trajectory of Crosby's music profoundly. Hearing these stories for the first time, fans were stunned not just by the revelations themselves, but by the humanity they unveiled. Nash's confession also touched on the cost of admiration. Crosby's reverence for his heroes sometimes led to personal conflicts, envy, and tension with collaborators who struggled to understand his intensity. Nash didn't shy away from these truths, framing them as part of the complex ecosystem that produced legendary music. The acknowledgement of these struggles humanized Crosby, revealing that even icons wrestle with insecurity, inspiration, and interpersonal dynamics. What shocked everyone most was the clarity with which Nash contextualized these influences. He didn't present them as casual trivia. He connected them directly to Crosby's songs, performances, and personal decisions. The confession reframed the narrative of Crosby's career, proving that his genius was deeply relational, a product of countless interactions with mentors, peers, and the music that inspired him. By the end of his revelation, it was clear that Graham Nash's confession was more than historical record. It was a testament to the power of influence, mentorship, and honesty in creative life. It confirmed suspicions, clarified misunderstandings, and deepened appreciation for a musician whose public persona often masked the intricate forces shaping his art. For fans and historians alike, it was a moment of revelation, a final insight into the mind and heart of David Crosby that would resonate for generations. David Crosby was never just a singer, he was a harmonist of rare vision.
Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, he helped define a generation with hits like Our House.
While his public accolades celebrated solo efforts, or the iconic groups he fronted, the intricate web of harmonies he created often went unnoticed by the casual listener. Graham Nash, who had shared countless hours in studio booths with Crosby, understood this nuance better than most. It wasn't just about hitting the right notes, it was about creating an emotional resonance that could make an entire song feel alive. Every chord, every subtle vocal inflection carried meaning beyond the words themselves. Nash revealed that Crosby's mastery of harmony came from a lifelong obsession with the sounds of those he admired. Folk, jazz, and rock legends influenced him in ways that were subtle yet transformative. But it wasn't just imitation. Crosby synthesized these influences into something uniquely his own. He sought textures and layers that few others could hear, listening to the slightest breath or intonation shift, and knowing instinctively how to fold it into the mix. Fans often marveled at the seamless interplay of voices in Crosby, Stills, and Nash tracks, but Nash's confession highlighted the painstaking precision behind every note. What many didn't realize was that achieving this perfection often led to tension. Crosby's demand for excellence sometimes exhausted collaborators, testing patience and temper alike. Nash recalled sessions where the simplest line could take hours, not because Crosby was difficult for its own sake, but because he refused to let a song settle for anything less than emotional truth. These sessions were grueling, yet they produced music that would endure decades. The frustration was temporary, but the results were timeless. The confessions also revealed the spiritual side of Crosby's harmonics. He believed that harmony was more than music. It was a reflection of human connection. Every note intertwined with others, like the strands of a human story, expressing empathy, longing, or joy. Nash's stories underscored that Crosby's brilliance wasn't purely technical. It was deeply human, informed by both his personal struggles and the friendships he nurtured through music. These hidden harmonies were a mirror to his soul, a subtle form of autobiography embedded in every recording. Ultimately, the revelation of these hidden harmonies reframed the way fans understood Crosby's work. They were no longer just songs to listen to, they became immersive experiences, each layer carrying a narrative that reflected the man behind the music. Through Nash's perspective, the public could finally appreciate the depth, patience, and emotional intelligence required to craft the timeless harmonies that defined Crosby's career. It was a legacy built on collaboration, obsession, and the unspoken understanding that music, at its core, is a conversation of the heart. The backstage world of a touring musician is often a labyrinth of secrets, pressures, and revelations. For Graham Nash, observing David Crosby behind the curtain,
David Crosby, the rock legend who helped define the sound of a generation, passed away at 81, and Lara is
revealed a side of the legend rarely captured in documentaries or interviews. Late-night hotel rooms, whispered conversations before shows, and post-performance reflections became the crucible for honesty. Here, away from fans and cameras, Crosby's vulnerabilities surfaced. Nash recounted countless moments when Crosby would speak candidly about other musicians, his inspirations, and the people who had shaped his life. These weren't casual name drops, they were confessions steeped in admiration, regret, and longing. Crosby often revealed the human side of those artists, telling stories of kindness, betrayal, mentorship, and rivalry. Nash noted that these anecdotes were always insightful, revealing not just who Crosby admired, but why he held them close to his artistic heart. One evening, Nash described a particularly revealing conversation. They were in a hotel lounge after a grueling show, and Crosby began naming the musicians who had influenced him most profoundly. Each mention came with a story, a lesson learned, a memory of collaboration, or a moment of inspiration. For fans who only knew Crosby through his records, these narratives reshaped understanding, showing that his musical genius was inseparable from his relationships with other artists. Backstage confessions also shed light on Crosby's imperfections. He admitted mistakes, rivalries, and choices he regretted. Nash explained that this openness wasn't self-indulgent. It was an attempt to make sense of a lifetime of experiences. From betrayals to missed opportunities, Crosby's reflections were tinged with humility, a recognition that even someone of his talent could stumble and still find redemption in music. These revelations, coming directly from Nash, provided a rare glimpse into the delicate balance between performance and personal life. Fans could now see the backstage truth. Crosby was a man grappling with his past, striving for excellence, and honoring those who shaped his journey. The confessions underscored that his art was born from complexity, vulnerability, and the quiet moments that unfolded behind the spotlight's glare. David Crosby's legacy is often measured in hits, awards, and legendary collaborations, but Graham Nash's confirmation revealed a deeper, subtler truth.
Multiple legends have left us. This week in San Francisco, I spoke to Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Graham Nash about the loss.
Crosby's influence was woven into the very fabric of modern music. He wasn't just a performer. He was a bridge between generations, connecting folk, rock, jazz, and experimental sounds in ways few could replicate. His mentorship and admiration for fellow musicians were as central to his impact as the songs themselves. Nash highlighted that Crosby's influence extended beyond technical skill. It was philosophical, emotional, and often unspoken. He inspired artists to pursue authenticity over conformity, urging them to take creative risks even when commercial success was uncertain. From arranging harmonies to producing albums, Crosby's fingerprints were everywhere, yet he rarely sought recognition. Nash's account illuminated the quiet power behind his genius, the ability to guide, challenge, and elevate others without overshadowing them. This influence also carried a moral dimension. Crosby championed honesty in songwriting and integrity in collaboration. Nash recalled countless discussions where Crosby critiqued ideas not for ego, but for truth. He pushed his peers to confront difficult emotions in music, to be vulnerable in ways audiences would feel but never see. This mentorship shaped countless albums, harmonies, and careers, leaving an indelible mark on the music world. For fans, Nash's confirmation was revelatory. It reframed Crosby not just as a singer-songwriter, but as a linchpin of musical evolution. His genius wasn't isolated, It thrived through relationships, through admiration, and through a willingness to be both teacher and student. By acknowledging the musicians he loved most, Crosby's legacy became clearer, a testament to the interconnectedness of artistry, influence, and human connection. The confession emphasized that Crosby's story wasn't solely about fame or personal success. It was about the subtle, enduring impact of one man who devoted his life to music, to mentorship, and to inspiring those around him. Nash's revelations allowed fans to finally see the full spectrum of Crosby's contributions, an enduring influence that will resonate far beyond his own recordings, shaping the sound of generations yet to come. As Graham Nash spoke about David Crosby's influences, the final truth emerged, not as gossip or speculation, but as a testament to a life fully lived in music.
Music history legendary singer Graham Nash has returned to the studio, once part of the Woodstock-era supergroup.
Crosby's love for other musicians, the respect he carried for his peers, and the admiration he held for artists across genres were not footnotes. They were central to understanding his genius. Nash described a man who absorbed inspiration from every direction, who learned from mistakes, and who transformed admiration into innovation. It was a portrait of a creative mind in constant dialogue with the world around it. The final truth also highlighted the fragility that accompanied Crosby's brilliance. Behind the harmonies, the intricate arrangements, and the charismatic stage presence was a human being subject to doubt, regret, and the pressures of an unforgiving industry. Nash revealed moments when Crosby's admiration for others sometimes led to envy, insecurity, or tension, yet these same moments fueled his creative drive. Every chord, lyric, and melody carried traces of his interactions, his friendships, and his struggles. This nuanced understanding gave fans a chance to see Crosby not as an untouchable legend, but as a deeply human artist whose greatness was inseparable from his experiences and relationships. Even in his final days, Crosby's influence persisted. Nash recalled conversations about musicians Crosby held dear, emphasizing that he never sought to elevate himself above others. His appreciation was genuine, his praise heartfelt. He recognized talent, nurtured it, and inspired it. The final truth was that David Crosby's legacy was less about what he achieved alone and more about how he shaped the musical lives of those around him. Every harmony, every note, every collaboration carried the echo of his respect, mentorship, and profound connection to the art form he loved. In confirming what fans had long suspected, Nash didn't simply list names or recount anecdotes. He illuminated a philosophy that music is a shared experience, a continuum where influence travels in visible and invisible ways. Crosby's admiration for fellow artists was a window into his own values, authenticity, emotional honesty, and a commitment to artistic integrity. Nash's revelation reminded the world that understanding a musician's legacy requires looking beyond public records and chart successes into the network of inspiration and love that shaped every note. By the end of Nash's confession, the narrative of David Crosby shifted. He was no longer just a member of legendary bands or a voice on timeless recordings. He became a connective force, a mentor, and a living bridge between generations. The musicians he loved, the moments he cherished, and the lessons he internalized all converged into a legacy that transcends fame. Fans could finally appreciate the breadth of his influence, seeing him as both a creator and a catalyst, someone whose life and music continue to resonate because of the artists he admired and inspired. If history hides more than facts, should we accept the story or wonder what silence was meant to protect? At last, Graham Nash finally speaks about David Crosby, but the impact of his words depends on how closely we listen. Before time softens the drama of the past, remember, some confessions are meant to echo forever. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.